Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. If only you would have prevented it. We want some kind of assurances in life that we may avoid the tragedy, that we may avoid the unbearable pain. We want some kind of a guarantee, and we don't get it. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. Some of you don't know my story as well as others who have lived with me through this story. 2002, we moved here. We came to Christ's servant. So that means this summer will be our 15-year anniversary of being here. Does it seem like 15 years? It does not seem like 15 years. Time has just sailed by. I would say a few years after that, maybe about 2005, I was just getting tired. Not of you. No, not that kind of tired. I was just getting physically tired. One of the things that Pastor Diane and I loved to do was go to Red Rock and go hiking. And I bought a map of that area, and I would mark off the hikes that we would go on, keeping track of where we went. And we took advantage of our two boys being in school, because we'd get them out to school, and then we'd jump in the car and drive out to Red Rock. And we couldn't go very long because we had to be back home, because Paul's special education bus would drop him off at the house around 2 o'clock or so. And we had to be there. They would not wait, and they would not let him off the bus, thankfully, but they would take him then to child find, and we would be in trouble as delinquent parents. So the pressure was on to always be back home. So we would go on a hike, maybe to Icebox Canyon or Pine Canyon or any one of the other hikes, and we'd take a picnic lunch and have a picnic out there. But around 2005 or so, we would get out of the car and start walking down the trail, and after about 100 yards, I would look longingly back at the car, thinking, I just want to go back to the car and go home. I was tired. I would just be plodding along, and I couldn't admit it to Pastor Diane because I'm a man, and but I was just plain tired. So what did I do about that mystery of being tired? All the men say, nothing. Yeah, right. I did nothing about it. I'm just tired. Well, then around that time, maybe a year or so after that, I started getting involved with my parents who lived in Santa Barbara at that time. Now, you have to understand, in my family, the whole goal in our family was you grow up, you go away, and you stay away. I did that very well. I'm the youngest of 7 because I watched my other siblings constantly go away and come back, and go away and come back, even into their 50s, going away and coming back. And so the contact I had with my parents for decades was I would call on Mother's Day for a couple minutes. I would call on Father's Day for fewer minutes, and I might call around Christmas time. And that was their limit. They didn't want any more contact than that. So around that time, a little before actually, we did do a trip to California, and we were going to stop in and see my parents with Mark and Paul, and I told Pastor Diane, now you realize we're going to go in the house, and we're going to sit on the couch, and we're going to read the newspaper, maybe the comics, and a baseball game will be on TV, and after a while we'll say, well, okay, bye. And we did that, right? And she's thinking, this is such a bizarre family. Why did I marry into it? We went to spend all our time with her family on holidays and vacations and things like that. But I started getting involved with my parents because they needed assistance. It first started out that my father, the world-known scientist, was still active in his mind, but physically was not able to travel, and he was invited to give keynote addresses to very large scientific gatherings, and so I went in his place. You remember when I would do that. We'd go to places in the United States, Oregon, Durango, then to Hawaii, then internationally, Sheffield, England, Beijing, China, doing these presentations where he couldn't. And I was tired, but I still did it. Then it became more than just helping him with his science work. Then it became helping them cope day to day, and they still lived in Santa Barbara. And every now and then, I would get the call, help. So I would drive to Santa Barbara or fly. A couple days, then I'd come home. And you know, we're also taking care of our son Paul and his imminent health needs every day. And then around 2007, we decided we needed to build this church, right? Boy, you remember those times, the booming times when everything was happening in this valley, and wow, it's really something, and we're building this church, and as we build this church, we decided we need to fix the original building because it had that plastic siding. Yeah, and everybody goes, oh yeah. And so we tore that plastic siding off and restuccoed it, and that meant we had to put scaffolding around that building, and we were still worshiping in there, and the parking lot was torn up, and I would make sure that those contractors would take down the scaffolding in front of the doors so we could get in there for worship, but I was just so tired. And you know what they wouldn't do? Take down the scaffolding in front of the... So I would get here on Sunday morning, the scaffolding would be up, and you couldn't get in the door. So you know what I did? Yeah, I took it down because I'm a man. Took the scaffolding down, we'd have worship. And I was so tired. I had to move my parents here also because they could no longer cope. Because my mother suffered from a dementia that meant she had no short-term memory. She could remember every embarrassing story about you as a child, but she could not remember the sentence you just finished saying. I would be up sometimes with her at 2 in the morning until 3 in the morning with the same 2-sentence conversation. She would ask me a question, I would answer it. She would ask me the same question, I would answer it for an hour until I could finally get her to lay down again and go to sleep. I was tired. So tired. And we kept this way, kept on going, kept on going. We built the church, we moved into the church, and everything was good. And I went to the emergency room one day because of sharp pain right here. I went to my doctor first. He thought it might be a blood clot in my lung. And so I went to the emergency room, and they did a CAT scan from here down. They said, nope, nothing there, go home. And I thought, I have to turn in my man card because I wimped out and went to the emergency room and lived to tell about it. A month later, I went to see an endocrinologist. Why am I so tired? After years of being this way, because I told myself, I am so tired because we're taking care of our son Paul constantly. I'm so tired because I'm getting older. I'm so tired because I'm taking care of my parents as they're in their last stages of life. I'm so tired because we're building a church here. All of these things add up to you're going to be tired. So I finally walked into that endocrinologist's office, and she pointed at my neck and said, "What's that?" And I said, "Oh, you mean these lumps? Yeah, I'm a man. How many times can I use that excuse? I'm a man. Men have lumpy necks." And she said, "No, they don't." She diagnosed me with thyroid cancer. And I thought, maybe if they'd done the CAT scan from here down, they would have seen that. So I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Now, if you were here at the church at that time, you remember that. I had 2 tumors, rather large, so that put me at a stage 3 thyroid cancer. I had surgery, they cut me, and I lost my voice for a while. It took a long time to get my voice back. It took about a year of adjusting the hormone replacement and recovering from the surgery and so on until I started feeling good. But then my doctor said, we need to do a PET scan. This is less than a year after my initial surgery. She said, we need to do a PET scan. I said, what's that? She said, well, that is the definitive test to find cancer. Some of you have had PET scans, right? Anyone else here have a PET scan? Yeah, you've had a PET scan. A few of us have had a PET scan. I'll just tell you how it works. You go into the PET scan place, and they give you an injection with this lead-encased hypodermic because it's radioactive. And they inject some radioactive stuff into you. And then you relax for an hour, and then they scan, because what happens is this radioactive elixir will be absorbed by cancerous cells faster than other cells in your body. So after about an hour, that's enough time for anything that's cancerous growing faster to absorb enough radiation that when the PET scan happens, it will show up, it will light up, they say. When you are told you need to have this PET scan, your mind does things to you. You don't want to do this, but your mind takes you down dark pathways. And you start thinking things you don't want to think about your mortality. Now that dark pathway that you go down, and I say down because it takes you down, is not a single pathway. It has branches on it, because you explore one branch about what horrible thing will happen to you very soon, and then you come back and you explore another branch about what else could be found. And I did that. I went down those dark ways, and it's painful. And the test can't happen soon enough. You have the test, and it doesn't get any better, because you have to wait for the results. So a week after my scan, I went in, and my doctor said, you have cancer again. It's in the lymph nodes in your neck, which for a thyroid cancer has its own staging numbers. So it's stage 4, which is different from stage 4 liver cancer. But it turns it into stage 4A because now it has gone outside of the thyroid into a lymph node, but it's still in the neck region. If it goes outside of the neck region, then that gets much more serious. So now I have to go back for surgery again, 1 year afterwards. And of course, my man brain is saying, why did you ever tell anyone you were tired? Well, to save my life. This time the surgery, it was cut from here all the way down to here. He peels it back, scrapes everything out, puts the skin back, staples me up. Frankenstein had nothing on me. And he says, after 6 months of recovery, whatever feeling you have is what you'll have. That's all you're going to have. So now, if you snuck up behind me and touched me here, I wouldn't know it, because I don't feel the outside. However, I feel that someone cut me open and scraped me out every moment of every day and every night. I feel it. It's almost like if you took your hand and grabbed your neck like that. That's what it feels like. It's hard to sleep, to get a comfortable position. So I'm reminded of it. So I am not a good gauge of what's going on up here. So I need to have my doctor, my endocrinologist, do ultrasounds, and I take lots of blood tests all the time because she's looking to see what's going on in there. And it's difficult because there's a lot of scar tissue. This is a long story. But this is what life is. It takes a long time. And the answers aren't easy. My doctor said, I will never tell you that you are cancer-free. You will not ever have that in your lifetime. And she is very careful. And sometimes she does the scan and she says, I don't like this. There's something here. So she says, something here on this muscle. There's this thing that I don't think should be here either. And there's something between your carotid and your jugular. Well, that doesn't sound good, but she can't tell what it is. Now, sometimes it's obvious. She'll say, this is cancer because it even lights up on an ultrasound. So you need another PET scan. After 7 years of my first diagnosis, I need another PET scan. So you know what my mind did? Because now I've gone through the experience and I'm stronger and I'm a wonderful pastor. And so my mind took me down those dark pathways again. So on my birthday weekend, last weekend, I had a PET scan. I thank you all for my 60th birthday celebration here. And again, I will say I had no clue that we were going to be celebrating like this. I thought there would be, like a cake from Sam's or something like that. But I appreciated all the cards and well wishes and balloons and the Fried's cake and all that wonderful stuff. That was great. But if you really look closely at me, I was kind of reserved in many ways because I had just had a PET scan. And I'm in the waiting stage. And my mind is saying, you're going to die. My mind is saying, or you're just going to have another surgery and they're going to cut you from ear to ear this time. You're going to lose your voice. You're not going to... That dark pathway. The Lord set me down in the middle of a valley. And it was full of bones. And they were dry bones. Dry bones. You may have had an experience in life, or you may be still going through this life feeling like you are just dry bones. And the question is, mortal, can your bones live again? You may be questioning, how much more are my dry bones ever going to live again? You need that breath of God to once again have life. Breathe in you that breath of life so that you may live. The Lord says, mortal, these bones are you. Without the breath from the Lord, you will always just be dry bones. So we celebrated last weekend, and we had all that great cake, and I did the polite thing, and I had a plate of the cake, and I walked around. I wasn't eating it. I put it in my office, and I'll wait till I get home to eat it. And then I started eating some cake because it was, this may be the last cake I ever eat. So then on Thursday, I go to the doctor to hear some results. And when I went into the doctor's office on Thursday morning, it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining, it was blue sky, I look at the snow on the mountains, and I go into the doctor's office. And then about an hour later, because you always wait for that doctor at least an hour or more, but then she will spend an hour with you, talking with you. And then we look out the window, could not hardly even see the building next to us. And I think, well, this is a good sign. And she comes in, and she sits down at the computer. She says, well, Pastor David, let's see what we have. She says it sounding just like Sofia Vergara because she's from Colombia. And she looks like that actress, and she talks like her, and it's a lot of fun. I've never said that to her. So if you go see that same endocrinologist, don't you dare say that I said that, because so far she likes me. Okay, so she comes in, she sits at the computer right there at the desk, and I am staring intently at her expression as she's reading the report of the PET scan, which is about a full page. And I am looking for any kind of a hint, and she doesn't give it. She just reads through it, and she turns and she says to me, Pastor Dave, I have fabulous news for you. There's nothing there. And I thought, okay then, let's go home. Nothing there. And then she said, I'll see you again in 6 months. That'll be the longest span I've gone without blood tests and seeing her. 6 months. That wind was a good sign. I will breathe the breath of life into you, and in case you don't get the message, I'm going to make it 80-mile-an-hour breath gusts, which is what it was. So we went home and started eating leftover birthday cake, and I've had cake every day since that appointment. Now I have to go on a diet because I can't get pants on anymore. The breath of life. It's painful to go through times in life where you seem like you can't catch a breath, where your bones are dry and you don't know if they're going to hold together much longer. Lord, if you'd only been here. But Jesus calls out his name. Jesus calls out your name. And you come out from that dark pathway. Maybe you feel like your hands and feet are still bound and you haven't been totally put back together. But Jesus will give you life. Jesus will breathe life into you. Amen.